So, welcome everybody to another round of startup stories where we get to hear directly from founders about their own experiences that step into the unknown and maybe even a little bit behind the curtain that you can't find on the internet. And today I'm sitting here with Matthijs Keij, and he's the CEO of WithLocals. Hi, Matthijs.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, very glad to have you here. And yeah, cheers to the Netherlands. I'm sitting here in Frankfurt, Germany, so we're not too
Close
far from
by,
each other.
yes.
Yeah. And actually, I think we realized that you are right near one of Google Cloud's data centers, so you're also yeah, well
Yeah,
connected in Eindhoven.
should help for a good connection. Nice.
Great. And why don't you start off by giving us a little elevator pitch about what you do at With Locals, and then we can dig into some of the background about how you got there and your own founding journey.
Yeah, for sure. So, in a nutshell, what we want to do at With Locals is connecting people and cultures. So, you can do that in many ways. We started out in travel, so lots of people travel, and we want to connect them directly to local guides. We call them hosts. And the idea is that they will help you to experience cities in a different way because they know the city, they maybe know a lot about food or a lot about art, a lot about local architecture. So we have been doing this for quite a while. We also learned a lot along the way. But in essence, it's as simple as that. As a traveler, you go to a city, you come to our platform, you book a tour, an experience, and we will make sure that we give you a great tour while at the same time also giving those local guides an opportunity to earn a fair income.
Oh, I really love the idea, and actually it ties into a lot of dynamics that we're seeing in the market. So we can get into that a little bit later. But I know that that actually was not one of the first startups that you worked at. So maybe you can give us a little bit of your background, and you have a pretty rich history in working with startups.
Yes, of course. So I have a tech background, but during my studies, I already started at a startup. So that was not my company, but I really liked this vibe and the dynamics of a startup. And then at some point, I got the opportunity to work with another co founder and start a new marketing company. But that was, yeah, more of an agency model, so to say. So you can do that really well, but in the end, it's not super scalable. Usually, you need
Mm.
also a lot of new colleagues if you work with more customers. But that was, I would say, a good venture into building a company. And also a good learning point because we saw that in this online advertising market, data and technology were going to play a more and more important role. And as a company, we couldn't always find the right technology to do the things that we want to do for our customers. So we said, well, if we cannot find it, maybe other companies can also not find exactly that technology. So that's to company number two, and that was really a tech company. Well, I'm sure that we're going to discuss that. It all ended well with a sale to a big US company, but also lots of learnings along the way. So yes, a tech company is more scalable, but it also brings some unique challenges when it comes to product, technology, commercials. But for me personally, I think I learned a lot in that time. Also, a lot of things that I could apply at With Locals, where I'm still today.
Great. And so then when the With Locals team reached out for you, I think it was around the Series A
Correct.
funding timeframe. Yeah, what made you decide to get back in it again?
A couple of reasons. I would say one is that at that time we sold the tech company. And then suddenly, from a team of 15 people, you're part of a team of 15,000 people, which was an interesting experience. because you go into that feeling like finally we have like a big company that can help us to grow a lot faster, and there's probably tons of resources available, only to find out that sometimes things actually slow down with so many people, a lot of internal politics. So also there, I would say I learned a lot. We stepped into that maybe a little bit naive, but I also felt like I'm not sure if I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I think this opportunity came at exactly the right moment because I was already considering to start another company. But then this opportunity came along, WithLocals, still a startup back then, but also with a really strong mission. So what I said in the beginning, connecting people and cultures, it has always been the mission, and I think that's really powerful. Of course, we're also here to make a profit, but I really feel that we can also make a positive impact on the world. And for me personally, that was a big driver to join WithLocals.
And that seems to be a common thread for startup founders, also that passion about your goal and your mission. And yeah, interesting to hear that once you're acquired and trying to be folded into a larger company, then the politics are more important, unfortunately.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So thinking about that goal and that mission, because I really love this idea of how you're connecting people and connecting cultures, even across different walks of life. So how are you approaching this connection and bringing people of different backgrounds together?
Yeah, so I guess this really goes back to the beginning of WithLocals, and all credits to Willem, the founder of WithLocals, because he basically came up with this idea when he was traveling in India, and he found out that it's just so great to do this with a local if you don't know the country that well. And then when talking to one of the locals who was showing him all different parts of India, this local guide, RP, said, "Hey, I would love to do that more, but it's so difficult to get customers. And I hear that you have a background in marketing, so can you maybe help me?" So that was really the first seed of this WithLocals idea. Then Willem came back, then with some other people thought about this idea. And that was really the starting point. So can we cut out all the intermediates? Because if I pay, let's say, €100, $100 for a tour, goes to a travel agency, then it goes to a smaller agency, to a local tour company, and then to the tour guide. Well, you can imagine that €100 suddenly is only €1 for the tour guide. So if you can do that directly, yeah, that's a really strong proposition.
Yeah, that's key kind of behind a lot of these community ecosystem business models that have come up in the last years. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the gig economy and how the team is approaching working in that space.
It's also a tricky topic nowadays, because I think some companies are maybe not doing it right, but that's my personal opinion. For me, it's not really about the gig economy, but about ways we can help people to earn a fair income, to do something they really love doing. And many times, our hosts, the local guides, they are not always professional tour guides. They can be a chef in a restaurant. We have a woman who is an artist. She works in the Sagrada Familia. She knows a lot about art, but also about light. Imagine that you do a tour with her. She actually works there, can tell you all about the art, about the effects of the light that comes in. But yeah, at the same time, she does have another job. So for us, that is something that works really well, because we would like to find people who really have a passion for something. Because if you share the same passion, whether it's art or food or something else, yeah, that's already a really good start of any experience. So that's how we started. And over the years, we've seen that some local guides decided to really make this a full-time job. where they only do tours, even coming from a job like being an architect, which is a pretty nice job, right? But then they really liked the whole element of interaction with guests from all over the world. Maybe also a bit more flexibility in the way you design your tours and you design the whole experience. So I think the answer to your question is yes, of course, we also work with tour guides, but we see that widening that net allows us to build a really strong community with lots of different people in it.
That's empowering to see. Then there can be these evolutionary steps, and it sounds like WithLocals has evolved since you became CEO. So what were your goals when you started with the company? So Series A and scaling, how did you tackle that?
Yeah, I think you already said it. I think scaling is always the number one challenge, and then everything that comes with it. One very important topic was how can we go from where we were at around the Series A round to indeed a more scalable approach. And for us, product played a really important role there because I think travel is not necessarily a market where you see a lot of innovation, especially the existing players. Let's say it takes a while before you can even make an integration with a big travel company. So thinking back of my time at that tech company, online advertising, everything is connected, APIs available. It's the norm. You just expect that APIs are available. Well, that was a bit of a culture shock for me, that in travel, I remember talking to a really big travel company and they said, yes, an API. It's a good idea, probably in 1 or 2 years from now. And I was like, how is that possible? So that was one, like how can we make our product stronger? How can we build integrations with other players in the ecosystem? I think if I look at the team, company culture, that's always really important. And I know it's a really broad term, but I think if your mission is to connect people and cultures, the least you can do is to make sure that you also do that within your own team. So there was also some work to do. And yeah, this all sounds like I had it figured out. Of course, you run into a lot of challenges, some of them really unexpected, and then you just try to do better next time.
Yeah, can't plan for everything.
That's it.
So maybe tell us more about how you set up the culture. So you came in and there was a strong core team. So how did you evolve that?
Yeah, there was a strong core team. But if you look at how diverse the team was back then already, like people from all kinds of countries, not just the Netherlands, but I would say the management team was maybe a little bit too much Dutch focused. The composition, I mean. And yeah, that was one of the learnings. Like, how can we make sure that we can collect input from the entire team to essentially drive better decisions? But of course, that takes a while before you get there. And I think the other thing is, do you all share the same values? And if you know, what do we, because I can tell people, hey, we connect people and cultures, and it sounds really nice, but if we all have a different idea regarding what exactly does that mean, then it's not going to help us. So we did it, well, actually quite a good amount of sessions with the entire team to figure out what are really the core values, the things that we feel are paramount to WithLocals and our success. And in the end, I remember I got the first suggestion, and that was passionate. I was like, oh no, because it to me at first it felt like, yeah, that's what a lot of companies are saying. But then I saw all the detailed feedback, and I understood, yes, this is really important because the whole team is passionate about travel, about doing something good, but also the hosts. They also have their passions and they want to share them. So it is actually a really important value. Authentic is another one. Like there's lots of experiences that we can do that would actually make us a lot of money, but they are not really in line with what we want to achieve. So think about sustainability, for instance. Quad racing in the desert is a popular experience, good margins, but yeah, is that really the most sustainable experience that we can do? So if the answer is no, then you shouldn't do it. So that was an important one. And the last one is connecting, which really goes back to the mission, and you can apply that to everything. So connecting with your colleagues, can you help them when they struggle, with the host, with our partners? So yeah, that really helped.
Yeah, those are four very strong tenets, definitely. I really love also how you include the sustainability tags in your tours. And are you finding so it's a mission for your company, but is it also a decision criteria for your customers?
A good question. So if you ask them, the answer is yes. If you then look at what is happening in real life, it's not always the case. So, and I think it also goes from here, right? So a lot of people want to be, let's say, mindful about sustainability. But at the same time, we are a travel company. And that's also something that you have to realize. I don't think that WithLocals can solve the issue of flights, for instance, and the impact on the environment. Of course, we can give tips to customers, and we can recommend going by train in Europe if that's possible. But for me, sustainability is more than just climate. That's a very important element. But supporting local economies, for instance, that's also a really important element, which we can, of course, integrate in our tours. We can go to, I don't know, McDonald's during a food tour, maybe not the best option, but we can also go for a local small restaurant owned by people who actually live in the city. So we look at the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and then we see where can we make the biggest impact, and that's how we approach sustainability.
Yeah, that really resonates, I think, also to say you focus where your team can have the most impact and then also still make people aware, of these other decisions that are
Exactly. Yeah.
around the side. Yeah. Well, now we've talked about the mission and how the team is actually working, but why don't we go back to your previous founding experience and what you learned, let's say, from your marketing startup or your data analytics startup? What helped you the most on your way?
Um, External advice that has been really valuable. Sometimes you feel like there are so many problems that I still need to solve. But of course, you don't have to solve them on your own. There's also a team. And if you can also not figure it out with the team, just reach out and get help from other people. I remember we were with the data analytics company. We were struggling a little bit to explain what type of company are we. And we had this vague idea, but we didn't want to put ourselves in a box because there were some competitors in that box and they were everything that we didn't want to be. So I talked to a coach, a person who was also in that industry, and he said, why wouldn't you put yourself in that box? Because in the end, it's just a label and it's a good starting point for you, but more important for your customers to understand what exactly is this company and what can they bring me in terms of value. And then you can explain how you are different from all those other companies. So long story short, we did that. And a big surprise, suddenly we could charge 10,000 euros per month instead of 500, for instance, because we had this collection of tools, really, really complicated story. And now we could say, hey, this is the type of company we are. People, they understood it and they were also willing to pay for it. So yeah, sometimes you just need somebody else who shows you this mirror and then you're like, that is actually a good idea.
Do you keep going with that? Do you have a network of other founders that you toss ideas around with?
Yes, a lot of people actually, and sometimes it's people you already know, and sometimes you have a question about a market that is new to you. And yeah, my approach is I go to LinkedIn, I try to find relevant people, and most people they will at least respond to a message. And my experience is that many people are also willing to go for a quick chat where they share some experience. Um, and if you do that with a couple of people every week or every month, yeah, that is super valuable.
Yeah, the influx of ideas and perspectives from different areas, super
And that
important.
I would say, especially when that input comes from different markets. So with locals is in the travel market. Last year, we also had to look at other opportunities because, yeah, so many travel restrictions.
Yeah,
Um,
the elephant in the room,
yeah, we'll get to
COVID.
that. But then that was also a moment where I realized maybe it's even better to talk to people outside of this industry because they might have a very different perspective. And it turned out that indeed they did, which also really helped us to do this little pivot.
Yeah, speaking of pivots, that's a nice transition. When the COVID lockdown came, were you prepared in any way, or how did you make those quick decisions that were needed?
So were we prepared? No, not at all, I would say. Of course, we followed the news, and I remember we had a board meeting where I told the board, "Hey, we see like a little bit of impact in Asia. We are not sure what the final impact will be, but we are not going to worry." And then I think only 6 weeks later, especially the moment when Trump told US people, "Hey, it's better to come back to the United States." That day, like it was like all alarm bells went off at exactly the same time. Well, I'm sure that you can relate to that feeling. Um, and that was hard because, well, no new bookings. That's not a surprise, of course, but that also means no new revenue coming in. But even more worrisome, lots and lots of cancellations. People who said, "Yeah, I'm not even in Europe anymore, so I cannot do my trip. And I would like to have my money back." So you see, there's money going out at a massive rate. It's not really clear how long this will take. So I'm a very optimistic person. So of course I hoped maybe in 6 months this is all gone. And then you think about it a little bit longer and you see this is going to be something very, very serious. And then you have to act really, really quickly. And that's also a really hard part. So again, this sounds like you think about it, you make decisions, and that's it. Of course, you have to take decisions and do that fast. But it also has a lot of impact on your team. We also had to do a reorganization. It has impact on your customers. They cannot do their trip. In some cases, there were also some logistics that we had to figure out. The hosts, they feel like, "Hey, I'm basically losing my job, or at least one of my jobs." Also really big impact. And then it also helps to talk to other people, exchange experiences, maybe not even to come to a direct solution, but just to make sure that you have people around you who can also help you in that phase.
Yeah, it must have been very challenging, and unfortunately, we're still weathering it now. So, as you've looked ahead, how are you approaching your next milestones and the uncertainty that we see for with locals?
Yeah, so after the initial shock, we decided that, well, travel was not a really good outlook. So we had all these ideas. We're going to so many new cities. Well, we shelved those ideas for a while. And then we said, well, if we go back to that mission, connecting people and cultures, are there other ways where we can do that? Even if travel is not possible. So we very early on, we started with online experiences. And I was also a little bit hesitant in the beginning because, of course, if you love travel, yeah, you prefer to go to a city. But then we found out that we could actually turn that into a really nice experience as well. So we have this lovely couple in Venice, for instance, and they did a tiramisu cooking workshop. And that was really popular. At some point, they made so much tiramisu that they had to bring it to the local elderly home because they couldn't all eat it themselves. And yeah, the feedback from customers was also that, yeah, they were all in lockdown. So it's really nice to do something to still meet people from other parts of the world. We also found
Maybe
out.
that
Go
maybe
ahead.
that raises their cachet for the next time people are traveling in Venice. They definitely want to do a tour with the
Well,
local
actually,
tiramisu
that is what we are
menu.
finding out because we also realized that just online experiences, that's not going to cut it. So travel will come back. And again, yes, it will take a while, and not every country is already open for tourism. So we still have to be a little bit patient. But I think one thing this whole situation learned us is that if we can combine the online element and the offline element, like you said, going to a city, I think that's great. Imagine you're going to Bangkok. It's a big trip from Europe. So how nice is it if you can already meet a local guide, ask some questions like, what can I do over there? Maybe a nice area where you want to stay. Maybe talk about some day trips. And then you go there and you actually meet that person. So that's definitely something that we're going to pursue moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. The intersectionality, and so maybe coming out of this, it will be even bigger than it was before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can tell us also a few tidbits of information that we don't know that we can't find on the internet. Um, any secrets?
Whew. Secrets, yeah. Well, I guess many. Uh, Lots of company parties come to mind with karaoke. Um, Pretty sure that you cannot find that on the internet. But in
Thank
terms
goodness.
of new ideas, um, I think in travel it has been really hard for a lot of companies, and I think the hardest part is to let go of something that you've done for a really long time, and that's a lesson that we had to learn as well. So yes, we also will go back to a lot of things that we already did before the pandemic. Um, but I think for me, it is really that combination of online and offline. And I guess this is not super secret, but just look at the creator economy. It's a very different market, but I think it's also a market in many different ways. There are platforms that bring musicians together. There are platforms that bring writers together. But in travel, you don't have, at least as far as I know, you don't have a lot of platforms like that. And I think that intersection that you mentioned, that is going to be really interesting because sometimes people are not able to travel for whatever reason. And if you can still offer something that is relevant to them, and for me, that is really tied into that whole creator economy, both for the hosts that we have, but also for the customers, the guests.
Mm. I love that also with how you're connecting people from different walks of life. So maybe you can't afford to travel in these areas, but you still have these
Absolutely.
options. The
Yes.
boundaries are lowered. Wow, it's a great story, and it's been super talking to you, Matthias.
Thank
And
you.
maybe any parting words for our listeners today? Any last tips or tricks?
Um, well, I would say if you are a founder, also looking back at this conversation, always be open to feedback. And if people don't give you the feedback directly, make sure that you find people who will give you feedback, because I think that's the number one thing that helped me to improve and basically become better at what you do, not just for yourself, but also for the company. So yeah, I would say that's my advice for today.
Yeah, great. Well, lots of good advice, and we definitely wish you all the best with
Thank you.
locals. And we're all, we say in German, we're pressing our thumbs that things will start to reopen again, and we can both virtually and physically experience the world
Thanks,
again.
Emily.
Yeah. Until next time, I hope we can do this again.
Definitely. See you
All
soon.
the best.
Bye bye.